Again, I'm talking to my buddy Steve Horn from DeSmogBlog, DeSmogBlog.com, on Twitter at Steve A. Horn. So, moving on to kind of the second post that you did on this, the second one, because I mean, like, I think most people can kind of wrap their heads around oil and gas, energy, lobbyists, corrupting state governments, corrupting regulations, corrupting the EPA in some ways, this whole kind of circle of corruption going on here. But let's kind of get to some of the very practical results of this, because so it's like, okay, yeah, shady oil billionaires, laughing at people and making deals behind the back. The second piece you wrote is actually how this directly affects people, specifically kind of with Oklahoma when it comes to things like fracking earthquakes, which are, again, gigantic in Oklahoma right now, and even more specifically, methane being shot through the air through fracking, which, again, you and I have talked about a bunch of times, how dangerous fracking actually is when it counts that methane's actually a greenhouse gas, and people want to focus on carbon, but actually methane is actually over a couple decade span worse than coal. So let's get into some kind of the actual practical consequences of the lobbying that this non-lobbyist has done.
Absolutely. So we talked about the safe drinking water. It's another regulation that was crucial thing that they fought against, that they also boasted about in their own news. I don't know if it was sort of a history of themselves that they wrote in 2006.
Right. And
in that history, they again boast about the fact that as a collective, we did. They never used the word lobby, but we whatever we did, we ended up getting this exemption to the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which was a bill passed in 1974 by Congress in the same era where environmental regulations were being passed. And what this bill does, it has a key clause that says that waste, solid waste, should be regulated under this bill, so that you can't just dump stuff wherever you want to. They're caught. You will pay fines. You will be punished if you do that. But what happened is that the oil and gas industry,
big government, we should be able to dump wherever we want to.
So this is kind of like the same origins of Superfund, and it's sort of the same exact fight. But oil and gas said, well, this would cost us billions upon billions of dollars if we can't dump our waste. And plus it's clean and it's no big deal. Like the states do it just fine. This is what the argument was at the time. And I'm actually I'm paraphrasing, but this is coming, if you look back at IOGCC comments that they were making to the EPA at this time, this is more or less what they were saying in the comments. Yeah. So, as they were doing this over those years in the 1970s led to the 1980s when this was being hammered out by the EPA about what they should actually do. So it was still unclear. It was sort of on a hiatus. EPA said, we are going to do a report. They're supposed to do the report in 2 years, in 1980. It took 7 years to actually end up doing it, culminated in a report in which the EPA came to the conclusion that oil and gas waste are exempt, basically. And so IOGCC in that time, between when the bill was originally introduced in the 70s and then into the 80s, was doing various things to ensure that this was the case. And so now today, the consequences today are this exemption has led to things like you can just inject these oil and gas wastes into wells.
Right.
The injection wells that we now talk about, which are causing the seismic activity, because this waste from fracking has to go somewhere. And so we look at Oklahoma, IOGCC's backyard. This is actually the worst. It's almost, it's a poetic injustice of history that in IOGCC's backyard, the people of Oklahoma are suffering some of the worst consequences of this. But we have these earthquakes across the United States from the waste that are being injected. But not only that, we look at waste pits. It's not injection, but just the brine and other junk from oil. There was a crisis, just one case study in a town called Grand Bois, Louisiana, which in the 1990s led to a huge, human health crisis, basically there, where 60 Minutes, which doesn't usually cover these types of things. It got so bad that even they went into the city or the town and did a whole special on the crisis there. And there was a class action lawsuit there filed against Exxon, and IOGCC was involved in trying to discredit this, as you'll see in future story, discredit this report without saying kind of the root cause of why they were so concerned, which was that, oh wait, like we're the ones who caused this.
Yeah.
So that I think, and then there's the methane issue, and that gets us to today. There's a lawsuit right now, or a lawsuit that was just decided in Evanston, Illinois, in which there was methane air contamination issues due to a natural gas storage site, and that was a RCRA, or Resource Conservation Recovery Act lawsuit, basically saying that they violated RCRA. Well, what the industry argued there, and the pipeline company argued there, is that no, RCRA does not apply to us, and it hasn't since the 1980s.
Right.
So, this was something that was, this leakage was happening close to a school, close to a senior center in Evanston, and coming full circle, the court decided, well, yes, like the legal precedent is that this does not apply to the oil and gas industry. If you look at the history of it, it never has, and so therefore, no matter what the merits of the argument are, no matter what the human health consequences are, this is the legal precedent. The district court there did not go ahead and overturn that precedent. And so this is some of the legacy of that. And of course there are countless case studies if you go to community by community and look at what's happening with the earthquakes or any other cases where there might be methane leakage. And I would say that I have to look into this more closely, but the crisis that we saw in California, that was natural gas storage.
Right,
if someone were to try to bring a RCRA case there, I do not think they could because of this exemption. So,
wow.
Yeah.
yeah, it's frightening stuff.